thanks everyone for showing up at this Lunch and Learn. As you can see, Ian is filming my Netflix special. So be a good audience and you might be in a film. Just kidding. So a few months ago, thanks for laughing. A few months ago, Chris Wilkinson asked me to share some of the stuff that I've been working on the product side. And I thought it would be good to talk about some of the stuff that we do for onboarding at ServiceBridge. I haven't been in a Devbridge workshop in quite a while, so I don't know like what do you guys do and what kind of processes you employ. So maybe this is going to be a glimpse of what we do because it's very similar. You know, we design, we have product management, we have engineers, but what we do once the product launches, there's extra few steps that maybe you guys don't get to do. So I learned a lot of interesting things that I wanted to share with you. Is anyone familiar with the pirate metric? Michael, can you tell us what's a pirate metric? Yes, I'll help you because you're chewing, so sorry, didn't mean to call you out. Basically, a pirate metric, it's like the bee's knees of all the metrics that you need for a product. If you think about it as a funnel or a timeline, everything can be segmented in what's important to help you make good decisions. So everything from when you acquire customers, how do you engage and activate them, and then how do you get them to refer your product to their peers, all the way down to the revenue. So today what I want to take a look at is like a tiny sliver in the activation timeline called onboarding. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a history, I started working on ServiceBridge about 2 years ago. And the reason why we were brought in was because ServiceBridge has a lot of features. It's a very powerful tool. We have users that love it and it helps them to grow their businesses. But at that time, it was very difficult for the sales team to get people to get started. It took a long time and it was not scalable. So we were brought in to kind of help how to help people self-onboard and get started on that faster. And by the way, I'm not going to have a Q&A session at the end, so if you guys have questions, let's just have an open dialogue. Feel free to ask anything. And ServiceBridge is a field service management software that helps you run your business. You can schedule work, you can collect payments, you can do a lot of marketing stuff, and it integrates with many, many things. So to get it set up takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but once you do, it's an amazing product of how many things it can do for your business. So when we took a deeper look, we figured out there's a lot of broken processes and a lot of different things where people get lost in everything. Signing up for a product, hooking up your mobile device, all the way down to actually paying. Our sales team was collecting credit card payments for memberships, for subscriptions over the phone. So obviously that's not scalable, right? Like one person just can't do a whole lot, and people's expectations of a product are super high nowadays. So when we started, I put together this like UX roadmap of what am I going to do? How can I contribute to the team? So we thought about doing a heuristic analysis on the web app, the same thing for the Android app and iOS app, which is the same kind of thing, like very similar apps, but they're on different platforms, they're native, so each thing needed attention. And then we're gonna make a design system, redesign it. In the meanwhile, we're gonna fix all these small little problems that are happening on the current site, ServiceBridge.com. We're gonna help people sign up easier, and then in about 4 months, I'm gonna create the self-onboarding thing so you can start using the tool faster, and next thing you know, we're gonna make so much money, it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna make it rain. So that was the plan. Yes. So once we took a closer look, we found all these like different places where people got stuck, and a lot of interesting surprises, like these messages that who knows what they meant. Also, because the way that ServiceBridge was built, we had sales team that was selling features and engineers that were like patching things on top of each other and creating things for everyone that would pay for it. So you end up in a thing where there's 4 filters or 4 search bars with 4 different icons. They will all work. It was just very, very hard and difficult to use. Furthermore, just to get started, a salesperson would have to be on a phone demoing how it works, and it would take anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes just to get started, to get your phone hooked up, to import your data. If you use QuickBooks or any third-party integration, forget about it. It would just take too long. And then to learn the product, this is, I took a header of every possible header that you can have throughout the app, and all these different segment and filters and different things would just really like load your mind with so many things to do. It was very hard to use because it does a lot. This is just a collection of some of the menus of how many features we have. So if you have it all enabled, it can do a lot of things. But to get it started, it's like, I think Aurimas and Ian might appreciate this. You'd have to read a manual like this, like where there's 442 pages at least just to learn about what goes onto the screen. So there's like a lot of documentation to read. And people's expectations nowadays is more like this. If I want to take a picture, that's my camera, right? I shouldn't read anything, I should just use it. So when we took a closer look, and it's unmoderated user testing, so we're trying to see what are they trying to do? Like, just keeps going through all these screens, and finally they're like, okay, I'm gonna go to live chat. I'm gonna ask for help. I don't know if you guys can read this. This is at twice the speed. Can everybody see what they're typing? Hi, just trying out your system, trying to get the phone app on my iPhone. Think I need a nuclear scientist to help me. So that's what people are asking. They want this tool. It does everything they do, but that's what happens. And the reason why is because we have, I found these stuff like this. It's a radio button with a switch on and off. I don't even know where I found it. I just took a screenshot for later to fix it, and this is from my heuristic analysis. So basically, I know how you guys like memes. This is the best thing I could come up with for how people felt inside of the first experience. Sorry? Like heroin? No, this is before heroin. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you needed medication to get started. All right, so we thought, okay, so we have to fix onboarding, right? And Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is for onboarding. That's how we kind of divided our week, that we're gonna spend a lot of time improving onboarding. So that's what the presentation is about. Sorry it took me that long to unravel. So what do you guys think when it comes, when you think about onboarding? How do you define onboarding? What is it? What is onboarding? Okay, and how do you help people to onboard? So there are many things, and I know you guys are not throwing the answers right away, but I'll help you. So, if you remember LinkedIn a few years back, they had this gamification where for filling out your profile, you're gonna get points. It's gonna connect you with things. So it could be like a product tour, or maybe a step-by-step walkthrough, a checklist of things to do, all the 0 states. And for some products, it could be like a funnel path of specific workflow that you might do. So onboarding just kind of helps you learn how to do all those things that you have to do on your own. So then, any of these things sound familiar to anybody? Are there any teachers? No? So I was trying to figure out what is the best way for people to learn how to use things. And I ended up taking a class at my old university about instructional methods. I know it's gonna sound naive, but I thought that a biology teacher would learn biology and then teach it. And a math teacher would learn math and teach it. It never really occurred to me that teachers have to learn how to teach, and then you teach that subject. And these are all the different types of methods of how things are taught. So for example, when you think about a physics class, you might have a setup where it's like a lecture. People are sitting and facing kind of in this situation and listening to the lecture, but there's also labs where you have to do some experimentation to learn how things work. In a in a communication or speech class, you might have to do research and then debate your point and practice how to deliver your message. And a gym class, you have to do an activity because everybody learns differently. So you can teach the same thing, but in a different way. And I'm sorry to use such a graphic meme, but all right, so what is the best method for onboarding? Like which of those methods do you pick? Well, it turns out that you might need everything. You might need walkthroughs and product tours and support and chat and webinars because everybody takes information in a different way and they might ask for this stuff for different types of formats. So then the next thing was, okay, so we have to put like tooltips and walkthroughs and videos and everything, and that would be super, super labor intensive and expensive, and we started looking into whether we should build it or buy it. And oftentimes in the product world, there's already so many other things that you can get and implement rather than build your own. And like even like I'm sure that Devbridge uses a lot of like, we use Jira, right? We're not building our own Jira. We can use Outlook and Salesforce. So the same thing for onboarding. We made a list of what we need. So we needed announcements, a tooltip manager, which we already had tooltips, but to actually make a tooltip in a software, you would have to write a Jira story, send it to the engineers. Well, I would have to design it, what it looks like, put the text in there, send it to the engineers. The front-end person has to make that tooltip, and then the back-end person has to put it in where it's supposed to be, and if there is a revision, it has to go through the whole cycle, plus QA and all that stuff. Very complicated. We also needed an onboarding checklist, an NPS score. We wanted to test it, maybe some kind of in-app chat, support, and also drip campaigns, which is also a very important feature of onboarding. It's all those emails that you get automated every few days with a new promotion of what the tool can do. So we ended up getting these I think we already had Intercom, but for onboarding we got Pendo and Full Story. And if you have some time to test these out, they have awesome demos, really interesting products for like designers and PMs. Pendo is similar to AppQs. We evaluated those two, and Full Story is kind of similar to Heap and Mixpanel. All right, so now we decided, okay, that's what we need. These are the tools we're gonna get. We're not gonna build stuff on our own. And how do you get started in creating this onboarding experience? So that's where like the actual, the core of my work comes in. You have to determine like the first place where people are getting that frustration with whatever that thing that they're trying to do. And the second thing is, what are they hiring your product to do? Like what is that job that your product is helping them to do? And then you also have to determine activation metrics. So for example, where does the frustration start? And you can start asking questions. Is the thing that you're doing or process is too slow, too much paperwork, too many other softwares, or maybe it's too expensive, like there's some inefficiencies. How many of you were at Devbridge when we had Microsoft Teams? What happened to Microsoft Teams? Why? Exactly. So sometimes your frustration starts, or our customers' frustration start in another tool. They might be using something else, and that's what gives them frustration to look for a new solution. So then you think, okay, so like what is it that they're trying to do? And what's really interesting, and I highly recommend, if has anyone heard of jobs to be done framework? Okay, so for you that haven't really, I'm not gonna go into this, it's like way too much to unpack for this lunch and learn, but it's a very interesting framework that kind of helped me to frame all the things that people are hiring us for, rather than using like a traditional persona and prescribing what solutions we're gonna build. This is another way of looking at it. So if you wanna read this book or just Google it, there's a lot of things where it's gonna say something like, like building a persona may not be as relevant as figuring out when a person is doing a certain thing, and you're not prescribing an outcome, but rather you can describe what is the person expecting. And this is more like, this is jobs to be done, and this is more traditional way of doing personas. So I'm not gonna elaborate, but it was super, super helpful to determine what are they hiring us for. And then the activation metrics, that was very interesting. So Twitter, for example, well, there's 2 different numbers that I found in different articles, but they have an activation metric. For you to become an activated user, it's more likely that you're going to be a user if you follow 10 friends or 10 people or 10 entities that you would follow on Twitter. And some articles say it was 30. So once you figure that out, that's what makes people activated, then you can kind of nudge them into their experience for onboarding to do that action. And like, even if you don't have 10 friends to follow, you could say, okay, like, we know your hobbies, we know what you're into, like, look at these 10 things that you might want to follow. And that becomes an activation metric. So it's basically the first value that people get from what you promised them that they would get. All right. So how do you get all this information? Because now I know what I need, but how do I get it? And in our case, what really helped was mapping it backwards, talking to our users. Then we were watching users' full story user videos, and I was very fortunate to be able to leverage my team. Mapping it backwards, we did it manually. I wouldn't recommend it. That was a very tedious process, even though we would get about maybe like a dozen to half a dozen people subscribing a week. We were trying to figure out, okay, if somebody signed up for a free trial, then became a user and started paying us money, what did they do? What are those activation metrics so we can map it backwards? So we made this, while Kevin was here, we made this like spreadsheet. We're trying to count how many work orders they created, how many people they imported, how many times they logged in, how many minutes they spent. But there are better tools than doing it manually, so I would not recommend doing it manually even if it's a small number. There is thing called like Vitally, I.O. or Vitali, that does all that counting for you. We also offered an Amazon gift card to do some user testing, and we talked to some users. And the other thing was watching full story, watching videos of how people used our tool was super insightful. We were able, this was like a manual thing where we would watch the videos and make a matrix of what we should fix. And the other thing, I don't know if Julian is still here, but I'm very fortunate to have a sales team and a support team that talks to hundreds, like thousands of people. And if I need to ask something, I'm not asking like 5 users, but I'm asking a person who's talking to hundreds of users, and they can synthesize that information. In Intercom, I also read what people are asking from our support team. So this is like a gold mine to see like what, for example, like this invoice thing, why can't they figure this out? I can go into the tool and figure out the page where the problem exists, and then watch full story movies to see how they actually get where they get stuck, instead of having to schedule user testing sessions, give out gift cards and have people come in or do all these sessions. It's much faster. So once you gather all this information, then you form a hypothesis, because we don't really know, right? For the first time, you just have to take the best guess based on all this data that you collected. So we thought, like for onboarding, if we can teach them about navigation, what exists, right? Kind of the real estate tour. Here's the kitchen, here's the laundry room, like here's where you go to get payments, here are your settings. And then we listed the top things, those activation metrics, like if people create a work order, if they import some contacts and do like a few other things, we thought they would become an active user. And then we launched it. So this was like the big add-on, this quick checklist. We were able to do that with Pendo. It actually, you can create all that stuff and gives you a list where you can control it within your app, but you don't have to go through engineers. We also did things like improving workflow. We realized that everything was super linear, and if you're trying to create some kind of a work order, but didn't have that contact, you would have to stop what you're doing, go into another process, create a contact, then go back to what you were doing and start over. So by simply just adding this button that you can create a contact while you're doing something else, that was a super big win. I know it's very obvious, but like that was huge. Now for the sign up, we also did things like where we broke it out into different segments. We made it responsive so you can do it on the phone, and things like this. While people are signing up, we started to ask them for their address. Now, it's kind of a lot to ask because when you do signups, you want to do as little as possible, right? Just get that person in the product and get them using it. But by putting this helper text, that this is going to help us with scheduling and routing, not only we are kind of telling them what's the value they're going to get out of it, but it also kind of tells them like a little bit of a glimpse of what features we have. And they're more likely to give you this, and then once they're in the tool, they don't have to re-enter it again. So it's like a dual purpose sign up. So what tools did we use? Pendo does amazing things. Like for example, this whole thing is created in Pendo. We don't have to talk to any engineers. We can modify it on the fly, and we can monitor how many people read it, how many people click on it, how many people close it. It also does the walkthrough where you can create all these different things where it darkens your screen and does all the steps. And it's all within Pendo. It also does stuff like paths. So for example, this shows you the path that users took before they clicked on the help button and then went into submit. So you can kind of see like what starts the problem and how people get there. This funnel shows the success of the sign-up screen. So you can adjust each sign-up screen and see which step they get hung up on. It has feature adoption, it has NPS scores. And for Pendo, we pay about $10,000 a year. That's a Bill Cronin negotiated rate. Don't expect to get that deal. Somehow he got this magic. It's a very expensive tool. It's easy to implement from the engineering side. There's not a whole lot of effort. You can do that, I think, mostly with front end, a little bit of back end. But the setup effort is super high from, if you want to get data out of it, you have to go through the whole product, tag every page, tag every feature, every button, and then you have to have some kind of a governance. Because if multiple people do it, you're going to get lost in a naming convention. The other thing that I want to show you was Full Story. Full Story is really amazing. It kind of gives you an insight. The way that it works is it looks like a video of a real user, but they actually kind of just stitch together every click and every screen movement, and it becomes like a smooth video. And then you can watch what people, where people get hung up and when people are struggling. You can also like make it, watch it faster, and add the note at anywhere at this point. So that's a real user. You can see what location they're from and what operating system they're using. And what else did I want to show you about this? Oh yeah, and then you can also drill in into all the other sections, other sessions they did, and that's, for example, that is their first onboarding experience. So if that was a successful user, you can actually go back and see how did they start their first experience with ServiceBridge, and these are all the guides that they get into. You can see how effective they are. So you don't have to set up any appointments, you just filter out down the list of what you want to see, and you can see how they're using it. And if you see a problem, then you can just make a note, and then in the note section, it's going to aggregate every little segment and index it for you. So we had this thing where every Friday at 4:30, we called it like the, you know, the binge watch of Full Story with the team. Everybody would bring in whatever their favorite findings were, and then we would make a grid of all the problems and prioritize what should be fixed. And then anybody in your team can actually do this. So some of these things are obvious. You don't have to be in any particular, like an engineer can do it or a designer can do it, or anyone can use full story. And the pricing of full story is per how many sessions you want, so it's negotiated rate. To implement it is super easy. I guess one thing that I remember that I've been trying to get Pendo and full story from my team to help me make design decisions, but I couldn't get it right away because of the cost. So it took me about 6 months to convince John and Bill that we should do it. And if you ever want to get this, I think the best way to do it, and what I did, I made a presentation of how it works and all the benefits that it brings. Because if you just say, okay, like I want full story and it costs, like $10,000 a year, you're gonna get dismissed very quick. So you have to show the value of it. And the other thing is Intercom. Intercom is a beast. Our support team lives in there every day. People in the app can ask questions right away and get access to our support team. The other thing that it does drip campaigns. So you can set up, these are our 17 emails that you get from like when you start it, and they can be automated as soon as you get it. So you're not, as soon as you sign up, so you're not overwhelmed with lots of emails. Everything's kind of spread out, introducing new features. All right, so quickly to recap, if you're trying to if you're getting started in onboarding, you should determine what are they hiring you for? And onboarding is like build up a bunch of little aha moments, and those are the values that you're promising them. So it could be like a big one, like for Dropbox, like, oh, I can upload a file, just drag and drop and it's there, and I can share it with a friend. 2 things and like your big aha moment is done. But sometimes like with ServiceBridge, it's made of many, many of these aha moments. And it's an ongoing process because the product is evolving, you're making changes, and everything changes. Your guides change, the user's expectations change. Some things may not be like as important as others. And last thing that I want to share with you, I remember last winter, we went to Lithuania to work with the team, and we had a hackathon to do as many quick improvements as possible. Just like, there's so many little things that we saw that just could be like fixed very easily. And then during the kickoff meeting, the company, like the yearly kickoff, we were in Lithuania at the time, and we're having some drinks with the iOS engineer, the Android engineer, front end, back end, like this like little huddle. And we talked about how awesome some products are when you can just like, get a magic link in your phone and get started. And I was telling them how hard it is for our users to get the mobile app hooked up to your device. And the more drunk that we got, the more obvious it was that we should fix it. And they're like, oh, no, it's so easy. We can just like do the QR code and like it will just pick it up. You just pick it up and register it. I'm like, wait, you just download the app, you scan it in, and it gets activated without all this crazy stuff that we have to do now, which was you have to get like the UDID device code, copy a string of like 25 digits, send it over. I think maybe even call Michael. Nobody could figure this out. They thought it was like a nuclear scientist. And we just figured out this idea like just by talking, that it's so simple, because like I know what users needed. The engineers know like all these like easy fixes, and finally
devices. Gonna go add new device. QR code. Let's scan QR code here.
And some people treat that as an invoice. While
Boom.
accounting terms,
Success.
it's just that you're just sending the customer.
And here you go. Device is added.
how do you like that?
It's amazing. It's the best. Can't believe it.
So that's Ram. That's the person who helps people set up devices every day, right? And like it's just like for him, it's like that's all I gotta do, So, anyways, I'm fairly new to onboarding. There's so many materials, and if you guys want to learn best or talk about it, come to me. But also, there are many tools. There are many softwares that help with onboarding, and they put out amazing guides and tutorials and support. So like AppQs, Pendo, Full Story, Intercom, they're like thought leaders and they have amazing white papers on it. Thank you.